from any standard situation where we go into a front triangle. Now, bear in mind, one of the big themes of this video is that there are 5 versions of the triangle, and the one which is the most popular, the most well-known, is this, the front triangle, but we'll spend time on all 5 of the triangles. The number one problem is Bernardo comes in closer to me on the knees, is that Bernardo's shoulder starts coming inside the lock of my legs. That's the number one problem that we face, okay? Ultimately, what I want to do is I want to have Bernardo's neck and one arm inside my triangle, but what I don't want is the bulk of his shoulder. That adds considerably to the circumference that I have to cover with my triangle. The more Bernardo's shoulder comes forward, the harder it becomes for me to lock an effective triangle behind him until I'm in situations where I can barely cross my feet. Okay, that's not what we're looking for. So what we want to do in these situations is we want to eliminate the shoulder. How are we going to do that? Well, the number one method is for me to begin with angle. Okay, the more Bernardo's head rises, the more stress my triangle gets put underneath. Okay, so that's not good. The more Bernardo's head drives forward, the more the shoulder comes in, and again, my feet get forced apart. So we don't want to be square in front of our opponent, because as he drives forward on us, you see the impact on my feet. And we don't want our opponent's head rising vertically. You see the effect on my feet from that. Okay? So we've got to find a way to get around both upward postural pressure and forward stacking pressure. That means I've got to do 2 things. I've got to control his head, and I've got to get myself offline to an angle. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up and I'm going to cup my training partner with one hand behind the head. Let's try to avoid this kind of thing for now. Okay, we'll come back to that in the video, but for now, let's grip one-handed. Okay, so when Bernardo goes to posture up, there's some resistance there. Okay, secondly, we're going to need some kind of angle. So I'm going to put my calf muscle over his shoulder, just like so. And that's going to give me an ability to turn off his shoulder and then take my second hand and put it elbow deep inside my training partner's leg. So now we're starting to get angle on our training partner. Now, do you remember we said we had to eliminate the shoulder? That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to take our 2 feet and point them in the same direction that Bernardo was pointing. If my feet point down Bernardo's body and he puts any kind of forward pressure on me, my feet come apart. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swing my body around to face the same direction as him. When he goes to posture up, my left hand makes it difficult. Then from here, I'm going to take my left leg and I'm going to cover Bernardo's shoulder. So there's a sense in which, from the camera's perspective, the shoulder disappears. I've eliminated the shoulder from the lock of my sankaku, my triangle. Now, when I go to lock my legs, my support leg comes to my strangle leg. Don't try to bring your strangle leg to the support leg. Bring your lower back off the ground, and from here, I lock a figure of 4. When I lock, it's an unusually tight stranglehold because of the very nature of the lock. Because I made his shoulder disappear, and I turn inwards. Even when Bernardo goes to posture up on me, even if you go to stand up on me, it means very little. From here, I point my knee in towards the crotch. My thigh makes his shoulder disappear. And now the lock of my triangle is directly above Bernardo's head. When he goes to pull me up off the floor, etc., the stranglehold is enormously tight. And we get a very, very tight strangle indeed. Let's change our focus, let's change our angle so you can see something interesting happen to Bernardo's shoulder with regards to my triangle. I'll go on this side, Bernardo. I want you to pay attention to the back of Bernardo's shoulder, okay? When the triangle is done properly, you should be able to see his shoulder from the back. You should be able to see his rear deltoids. So Bernardo comes just right here, and I lock a triangle here, okay? Now, from this, bring the knees in tight, Bernardo. From here, I don't want his shoulder inside the lock of my triangle. We want to eliminate it as much as possible, okay? You will see something interesting happen. Currently, you can clearly see that with my feet crossed in this position, Bernardo's shoulder is inside my knees. It's inside of my overall triangle. But when I start finding myself going to an angle on Bernardo, you will see that as my knee comes forward, It goes past his shoulder. As he goes to posture up, rising with the hips. From here, I turn, and now the camera clearly reveals that his shoulder is outside of the lock of my triangle. The only thing inside my triangle is Bernardo's head and one arm. And as a result, when I lock the figure of 4, you can clearly see his shoulder is outside my triangle. If my legs were in here, I have a very hard time locking my triangle. His shoulder is still inside my lock. I need to take his shoulder outside my lock. This forms a perfect wedge, so that when I go in and lock the figure of 4, it forms an enormously tight strangulation. And even though I'm quite a bit smaller than Bernardo, I have no problems locking up a tight figure of 4. In fact, it's an unusually tight figure of 4. It's a much tighter strangle than most because of that simple change in angulation. We're always trying to eliminate the shoulder from the lock of our triangle. You want to create situations where only your opponent's neck and one arm are inside the triangle. The moment you incorporate the width of the shoulders as well, that's when short-legged people run into problems. Done properly, even a short-legged athlete like myself can lock a tight triangle on a broad-shouldered heavyweight in the fashion we just saw.
So guys, it's unbelievable when John was doing, how much angle he changed, right? Because most of the time when you see people doing triangles, they kind of stay flat and like 180 degrees against the opponent, right? So when John was doing here, he was going like 90 degrees or even more than that. He was changing the angle so much that I was feeling like his leg going against the top of my neck here. So then the choke was really, really tight. So just one more time, John.
What I want to avoid is situations where we're completely square on to our opponent, okay? That does several bad things at once. As Bernardo pressures in and brings his knees closer and closer to me, you see I get put under severe pressure. As he drives his head to my head, drives his head in towards my head, it completely brings my triangle apart, okay? So what we're always looking to do is to find angle. I'm going to need to control posture and find angle. Posture is controlled through the single collar here, and when his hips start to rise and he starts driving into me, you'll see that I hook inside my training partner's leg. Now, when I turn, it's like a tourniquet is being placed around my training partner's neck. I take my strangle leg, my right leg, and I point the knee inwards towards the crotch. This immediately creates a much, much tighter strangulation. I put a strong wedge behind my training partner's neck with this knee. The further my knee, the less wedging effect there is, the more danger is of him pulling away. So I want to make his shoulder disappear from view, as it were. Now in a situation like this, the second we make contact, we form a very, very tight stranglehold indeed.
So guys, look how his leg is right on my neck over here. Look, and then plus with my arm, I mean, like, I can barely breathe here, and he's not even pushing it. So
even before we lock the triangle, if Bernardo goes to talk, you'll see that the strangulation is beginning even before the lock of the triangle. Throughout my time in Jiu-Jitsu, I've always noticed a very simple rule. The students who progress the fastest are always those who learn to wrestle with their legs the earliest. When you look at the human body, there are fundamental asymmetries built into it, and one of the most important is the asymmetry in human strength between our lower bodies and our upper body. The beauty of the triangle is it pits the strongest part of my body, my lower body, against the weaker part of my opponent's body, his upper body. They tend to have very, very good effects in high-level competition where people are reluctant to submit, people are willing to take damage. That's when strangleholds really come to the fore, as it were. Among all the various grappling arts, Jiu-Jitsu is the one which pushes the idea of finishing opponents with your legs more than any other. The triangle, in its various forms, plays an exceptionally important role in my approach to the sport of Jiu-Jitsu and submission grappling. As a general rule, there's two ways to attack the human body. You can break the body itself, or you can attack your opponent's consciousness. So strangleholds give a gradient of intensity which is lacking in joint locks. The beauty of training triangles is that the only way you can apply them successfully is to employ or learn sufficient degrees of dexterity and coordination with your legs.